Ladies and gentlemen, Laurie Cardoza Moore, and I am coming to you with a Hanukkah message, a greeting, and I wanted just to share a little bit about this holiday with each one of you. I want to thank you all for your support and your encouragement over this past year, and it's a great honor to know that there are many Christians, Jews, people of conscience who support the work that we're doing at PJTN. And just as a little bit of an aside, the reason why we are teaching you, we are doing these little snippets and lessons about the holidays and the festivals and the culture of Israel, of our Jewish brethren, is to help us understand where Israel is. And unfortunately, there's been disinformation and misinformation taught for generations, for a couple thousand years, about Israel and the Jewish people and God's covenant with them. And some of that covenant a is a reflection of the lack of education or ignorance, if you will, by pastors and leaders who do not know the scriptures, do not understand the Hebraic foundation of the Bible. And I'm talking about the Old Testament and how the New Testament is part of that Old Testament, that promise, those promises that were made. So it's critically important that we understand as Christians what the Bible is, what the plan is that God has for Israel. God made a covenant to Abraham that's going to be eternal. It's going to be everlasting, he says, and he repeats it over and over and over in his word. And Hanukkah, the celebration of Hanukkah, although it wasn't one of the required feast days or festival days, it was obviously a holiday that was celebrated because of the persecution. The Jews were able to finally start worshiping God in the temple again. And this was a big, huge celebration. In fact, for Christians, Yeshua or Jesus was actually recorded in the temple courts on Hanukkah. So obviously Hanukkah was important for Yeshua to be able to participate in, so we should pay attention to it as well. I know that there are a lot of Christians who are starting to observe the holidays and the festivals of the Lord. These are feast days that God required of all Israel, and like Sukkot, the nations are supposed to participate as well. So anyhow, so we're gonna talk about this, and I just want to reiterate, for those of you who are not familiar with proclaiming justice to the nations or myself, PJTN's mission is to educate Christians about our biblical responsibility to stand with Israel and the Jewish people against the rise of global anti-Semitism. And we accomplish that goal by producing media like this, messages, documentary films, television programs. We have a podcast that we use. We send out emails to communicate. All of this is an effort to combat anti-Semitism in Christianity, because unfortunately, for, like I said, a couple thousand years, Christians had persecuted the Jews. It was Christians who stood by during the Holocaust. It was Christians who stood by during the Inquisition. It was Christians who stood by during the pogroms throughout history. And they justified their standing by because they said, well, God's forgotten his covenant. He's no longer has a covenant with the Jews anymore, with Israel. His covenant is with the church. And unfortunately, that is disinformation, and that's inaccurate teaching. So if we can help Christians connect with the Bible, and one of the things that we do in our Bible study group that we meet on Wednesday nights and on Saturday nights, we always encourage our students, when you read the New Testament, you need to find where the principle or the concept that's being communicated in the New Testament is established in the Torah, in the prophets, and in the writings. Those are the witnesses. Those are the witnesses that testify to whatever is written in the New Testament scriptures is from God. That this is part of the covenant, this is part of the promise, this is the outpouring or the fulfillment of the promise. And that's why it's so important that we teach this. It's one of the reasons why we have been involved in education. Because like in the state of Florida, because we were involved in helping to draft civic standards, our recommendations included teaching the children K through 12, that's 1.8 million kids every year, about the role that the Hebrew Bible played in the founding of our country, about the role it played in the drafting of our founding documents, and the role that it played in our form and structure of government. In fact, even the Republic The term republic comes out of the Hebrew Bible. So, but we're not taught this, and we're missing so much. And if we could just connect the dots, that's what's going to change people's minds about our Jewish brethren and about Israel. And that's how we are going to combat anti Semitism. We are teaching it starting with small seeds in K through 12. Before our children get introduced to anti Semitism, we need to start instilling in them the biblical values of who Israel is and what our responsibility as Christians is to the Jewish people. So, having said all that, I just wanted to clarify why I'm doing this teaching on Hanukkah and why it's important for you to share this message with your family and friends, because you're getting ready to be a watchman and I'm getting ready to reveal truth to you. And now you can share that information just by simply sharing this video. There's going to be a button down below. You can donate to help us to get more messages like this out. And of course, you can help us by sharing, liking, and commenting on what you're learning here. So just like the people in our Bible study on Wednesday night, on Saturday night, and then on Sunday in South Africa, we are teaching Christians around the world about our role and our responsibility to our brother Judah. And so Hanukkah is a great place to start. So let's just do a little bit of a history. Let me just share with you a little history on Hanukkah, because during this time, we're in the midst, in fact, we're in the middle of the 8 days of Hanukkah. It's an 8-day period of celebration. There are special songs sung. There are special foods like latkes and applesauce and sour cream and donuts that are eaten, usually typically fried food, because of the oil in the menorah lasting 8 days. But it's also marked by special times with family, celebration, with friends. It's a festival that commemorates the Jewish victory over the Syrian tyrant Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, we all know about Antiochus Epiphanes because we even read about him in the New Testament scriptures. But the word Hanukkah actually means dedication and refers to the rededication of the temple on the 25th of Kislev in year 165 before the Common Era, after it had been desecrated by the Syrian king Antiochus Epiphanes 6 years earlier in 171 BCE. So anyhow, so just to put this in historical context, 171 BCE, this is, after the Babylonian exile. During this time, we have the return of Jeremiah or Nehemiah and Ezra, who are going back and rebuilding the temple. So let's put all of this in perspective, what is going on when the original Hanukkah was celebrated. It is a holiday about religious freedom for the Jewish people. They gather, as I said, with friends and family together and sing songs. They say blessings, they light the menorah, and exchange gifts. It is a time of remembering their religious heritage and a time for bringing family together to celebrate at home, just like we did with our home last night. We had our kids here. We were lighting the menorah. We were eating latkes and eating donuts. It's not a very healthy diet, but you know what? For, one time of the year. But the kids, and we remember these things during this time. It's a reminder of the 2,000-year-old period of one little cruse of oil and the miracle of deliverance that God wrought for his people, Israel. And just in case you want to do some more research about this, I want to encourage you to go to the website Promises to Israel and look at the Hanukkah link. There's a lot more information. I'm not going to share all of it with you because I don't have a lot of time and I don't want to keep you, but I want to hit the highlights of Hanukkah. Today, Hanukkah can be celebrated in the following ways: by lighting the candles, by saying the prayers, by reading the scriptures. And in fact, the scriptures associated with Hanukkah are actually Numbers chapter 7, and also the prophet Zechariah in chapter 2 through chapter 4. And of course, there's prayers. There are 3 blessings that are recited at the time of the lighting of the Hanukkah, also called a menorah. It's a nine branch with the shamas candle in the middle. That's the candle that serves the other candles by lighting the other candles. The history, let's talk a little bit about the history of Hanukkah. The timing of the holiday is in the intertestament period after the closing of the Jewish canon of Scripture, with Malachi being the last. So from the close of the Hebrew Scriptures in approximately 400 BCE, you have major historical events taking place in ancient history. And kind of like what I just talked about. In 333 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered the Medes and Persians. When Alexander died in 323 BCE, his kingdom was divided among his four generals. Now, this is what was going on in that era at that time when Hanukkah, the original Hanukkah, was actually celebrated. 400 BC. So you have the major historical events taking place in ancient history. Alexander the Great conquered the Medes and Persians. When Alexander died in 323 BCE, his kingdom was divided among his four generals, the two most important being Syrian Greek Seleucids and the Ptolemies Greeks in Egypt. The Ptolemies controlled Israel until 198 BCE, when the Greek Seleucids took control of Israel. And in 175 BCE, Antiochus Epiphanes came to the throne in Syria. His policy was radical Hellenization of his entire empire. That's why when we read in the New Testament scriptures about the Hellenization, and you read some of the comments about the apostles, the disciples, who are talking about the Greek gods and the worshiping of idols. This is part of that Hellenization period. He desired to replace everything that wasn't Greek with Greek culture and Greek religion. They were trying to wipe out everything that was Hebraic. As a result, he attempted to eradicate the Jewish faith. He prohibited Jewish spiritual practices. He attempted to destroy all copies of the Bible. The Sabbath was outlawed. Now, this is Antiochus Epiphanes. Circumcision was forbidden, and he required everyone to worship the Greek god Zeus. In 171 BCE, his crowning outrage, his supreme atrocity, was to erect a statue of Zeus in the temple and sacrifice a pig on the altar in the temple compound itself. Greek Syrian soldiers would go from Jewish town to town and find a Jewish sympathizer to offer a pig on the town altar. On one occasion, they came to the village of Modin. An old priest by the name of Matthias killed the sympathizer, and his 5 sons killed the other soldiers, and then fled to the Judean hills and formed a guerrilla army or a militia. This triggered the uprising known as the Maccabean Revolt. Maccabee comes from the Hebrew word makab, or hammer. Judah, the oldest son of Matthias, became the commander of the guerrilla army and was known as Judah Maccabee, or Judah the Hebrew hammer. That's where that term comes from. In the year 165 BCE, Judah liberated Jerusalem from the Greeks and the temple from its defilement. The temple was then rededicated for worship and was celebrated with great public rejoicing that lasted for 8 days. Judah Maccabee then declared that future celebrations of Hanukkah should last for 8 days as well. And the main references to Hanukkah come again from 2 main sources in the Bible: Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 11. Then the books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Now, a lot of people, only Catholics actually have the book of Maccabees in their Bible. So, but you can find that book online and you can read it also to read the account. Other sources would be Josephus. Josephus was a historian. He was Jewish, and he documented a lot of the historical events around this period of time. So the traditional names for Hanukkah, of course, is Hanukkah, which is the Hebrew word meaning dedication. The second common name is Hag HaOrim, which means the Feast of Lights or Festival of Lights. This expression is found in the writings of the 1st century Jewish historian Josephus. He documented that. This name is based upon a legend Supposedly, when the Jews rededicated the temple and wanted to rekindle the lampstand, they found only enough oil for one day. It would take 8 days to make a new supply. They decided to kindle the menorah anyway and burn the remaining one-day oil supply. By a miracle, according to the legend, the oil lasted for 8 days. Thus, the name representing the Feast of Lights. So, as tradition would have it, the rabbis felt they should remember the miracle that occurred by celebrating for 8 days. The 8 day celebration would be accompanied by the name, the Festival of Lights. One other rabbinic tradition states this. The quote is, the sages decreed on the 8 day festival because they realized that the miracle of the lights would shine forever with a message of hope, because it was part of the light that would glow with the coming of the Messiah. Another quote is, the lampstand is lit to give hope and inspiration to the Jew because the light of the Messiah must burn brightly in our hearts. And we don't want to miss the rabbi's connection of the lights of Hanukkah and the coming of the Messiah. The Old Testament references, as I said, are found in the book of Daniel, chapter 8 and 11. And as I said, you can find the gospel references to Hanukkah where Yeshua was in the temple courts on Hanukkah in the book of John, John chapter 10. So it was the feast of dedication at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Yeshua was walking in the temple in Solomon's porch. Again, that's John chapter 10. So that's an important thing to note, that if that was an important holiday or festival for Yeshua to participate in, why doesn't the church? Why aren't we celebrating in the Festival of Lights? So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's about all I want to share with you. I think I hit the highlights. Again, I want to encourage you, if you want to learn more, I invite you to go to the Hanukkah page, the Hanukkah link on Promises to Israel. Just Google that and you'll find some more information. Another great resource for information about Hanukkah is to Aish. Go to Aish, AISH.com. And I want to just leave you with a closing note that as we are all experiencing religious persecution right now, we're all being attacked for our faith, both Jews and Christians, the people of the book. The great Satan, who we're referred to as the great Satan and the little Satan, the pigs and the apes, that's who is being targeted. Do we wonder why, ladies and gentlemen? It's always America and Israel. It's always Jews and Christians that are being attacked. And it's because of our faith. It's because we are not going to bow to Zeus. We're not going to bow to some foreign god. We're not going to bow and allow gods to be put up in the temple or in our lives. We have to fight those gods. We have to work to bring more light into the world. And we do that by living out our faith, living out the Word of God, keeping the commandments, keeping the Torah, following His decrees and His statutes. That's how we bring light into the world. And with that, I just want to thank you all, wish you a happy Hanukkah. And I know many of you are going to be celebrating Christmas, so I wish you a Merry Christmas. But I thought it was important for us to share this time with you and this information so that you can share it with your family and friends. Again, you're a watchman, PJTN watchman. We need your help. We need your support. It's the end of the year, and if there was ever a time that we needed your financial commitment and support, it is right now. It's been a tough year for us financially, as I've said in the past, and all it takes is just each of us making one small sacrifice, one commitment every month. Could be $5, $10, $20, no matter what. You decide. You speak to the Lord and ask the Lord what your contribution should give or be, because we are watchmen, and our duty as watchmen, as God told the prophet Ezekiel, is to warn the inhabitants of the city. Well, this is how we warn the inhabitants, by telling them the truth, so that they can turn away from their anti-Semitism, their hatred of our Jewish brethren, and they will stand with our Jewish community, whether it's in our neighborhoods, whether it's in our nation, whether it's around the globe. We can't stand and allow our Jewish brethren to be targeted, and we know that in the book of Obadiah, the Lord said in the last days he was going to wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob was held in captivity, and they did nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't stand by anymore, not when it's going on in our own neighborhoods. So I hope you'll join me. And if you are getting this message for the first time, you don't know about PJTN, I want to encourage you, go to the website, pjtn.org. Again, click on the link below, share and like. Let's get this message out. It's time for Jews and Christians to unite, to stand against this hatred, this global Jew hatred that the nations of the world are going to be judged for one day. So God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the state of Israel, and these United States.